Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on the Ethical Charter Implementation Program, or ECIP as it's commonly known. During the live webinar, we had a little bit of technical difficulties, which skipped my introduction and the first couple of sentences of our first speaker's words. Don't worry, you didn't miss anything. I'm going to recap what you missed here, and then we'll jump right into the live webinar. So, with all of that said, ECIP is an industry collaboration led by major buyers and suppliers committed to supporting the entire produce supply chain on a continuous improvement journey toward more responsible labor practices. The program is guided by an advisory group that includes Walmart, Sam's Club, Costco, Kroger, Target, and McDonald's, and 4 of their suppliers. Equitable Food Initiative, or EFI, as it's commonly known, serves as a supporting organization that manages ECIP software platform, which is called Lab because it supports employers to learn about the ethical charter, assess their management system, and benchmark their progress towards better labor practices. My name is Madeline Edlin. I work with EFI as their marketing and sales manager, and I will be your MC as we dive into everything you need to know with ECIP. You'll hear from several retailer and supplier organizations who are behind ECIP through live and video interactions. First up, I would like to welcome Carmen Ponce, Vice President and General Counsel with Tanamura and Antle.
Respect for professional conduct. It was being fully endorsed and embraced by the industry. It took flight. It was wonderful. But soon it became apparent that there was a need for us to dig deeper and to provide some tools to field level supervisors on how to bring the principles of the ethical charter to life without an audit and without government enforcement. So how to do that. TNA again participated in the program and worked on a pilot that eventually turned into what is now the Ethical Charter Implementation Program, endearingly called ECIP. And ECIP is not an audit program. It is not a compliance program. It is a skills building program. It helps those with management responsibilities know what is expected to meet each principle. So for the seasoned employer with evolved management systems, great. It's an opportunity for you to show how well you're doing in this regard, and perhaps to identify opportunities that need some extra work. So wonderful for you. Those that are less seasoned, will most benefit from the ECIP, will use it as a roadmap because it provides at relatively low cost. Like a grower only pays $200 annually to participate. And it's also a safe setting. You are entering the program, you don't have a hammer over your head, you don't have penalties at your risk, and you address the areas of improvement in anonymity. And that's what we think is one of the most important things. The buyers or suppliers that invite the growers in do not get to see which areas of the ethical charter are being worked on by either that supplier or that grower, which is great. So there's really no reason not to be completely honest and to take advantage of the program, which offers you sample policies, tips like getting terms and conditions laid out, sign-up sheets or training. And if what's available isn't enough, there's also a marketplace where you can hire professionals to help you even further. So from my perspective as a lawyer, I think that the Ethical Charter Implementation Program is just smart to do. It's smart because it's risk management. And as a lawyer, I'm always managing the risk for my client, Tanamura and Antle. And it's always good to be able to point to practices that you're putting in place to learn what is expected of you, putting programs in place to make them effective. And if you're sued, you're able to point to those and reduce penalties accordingly. So I thank you for your interest in the Ethical Charter, and I hope that together we can continuously work on improving our management systems. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Carmen, for that welcome and introduction. Great to have you and hear from you. Next up, we get to hear from Peter O'Driscoll, Executive Director with EFI. EFI is the organization that has convened the industry group, taken the lead in developing the online platform, and helped onboard suppliers and growers into the system. Peter is going to share the historical context of the program, the governance, and the pricing structure. Peter, welcome. Take it away.
Good afternoon, all, and thanks very much for joining this webinar. And thank you especially to Carmen for sharing her perspective on the value of the program. I'm just going to give you a little bit more context around where this all came from. Any of you who've been working in the industry for the last 10 years are very familiar with the LA Times series that came out in 2014. Which shone a bright light on some violations and really upset a lot of people in the industry who knew that they were doing the right thing, but did not necessarily have a means for demonstrating to their customers and ultimately to the consumer that they were running responsible businesses. And so in the light of this Product of Mexico series, as you know, the two major produce associations, the PMA and the United Fresh, got together and created an unprecedented joint committee. Alexandra, if you can move on now, to really look into some of the core beliefs that we as an industry hold together, to get them down and stipulate them clearly as principles that we all want to see upheld across the industry. And so it was that in 2018, through consultation with most major buyers and many suppliers as well, the two trade associations, which have since come together in the International Fresh Produce Association, launched and published this ethical charter on responsible labor practices. And right away, the industry reached out to all suppliers and growers and asked them to endorse these principles, which was a major step forward. As Carmen mentioned, there are 13 principles in the ethical charter. Many of these will look very familiar to any of the suppliers on the call who are selling to major retailers, because most major retailers have an audit requirement at facility level. In other words, they want you to audit your processing or packing facilities in order to satisfy their requirements. However, the critical issue was what happens at field level, because the major buyers do not have a field level audit requirement. And so the challenge became, how do we make sure that these various principles were actually being implemented credibly and effectively at field level? Particularly want to highlight the focus under respect for professional conduct on management systems. And the people who came together around the ethical charter implementation program believed commonly that the key to improving labor practices across the industry was to strengthen the management systems that employers need to have in place that offer the kinds of protections that we want to make sure all workers receive. And so it was that we moved on in 2021, after some years of discussion, to addressing this critical question. And again, to Carmen's point, from a risk management perspective, how could the major retailers and wholesale buyers be assured that the product they were sourcing was in fact compliant with the principles of the ethical charter at field level? Those discussions focused on several key elements of the program. On the one hand, we wanted to make sure that this would be supplier owned, and that's the importance of today's webinar and of the ongoing engagement that we will have in supporting suppliers to bring their growers in and to support their growers in meeting the principles of the charter. Secondly, as mentioned, we wanted to make sure that the support came through education, capacity building, and support around strengthening management systems. The ECIP lab platform that you'll learn more about offers a series of tools and resources to strengthen management systems, but also, as Carmen mentioned, ECIP has a marketplace that offers additional support through expert guidance and consultants who can help strengthen those management systems. Thirdly, we wanted to make sure that this was received and understood as a capacity building tool and not a compliance test. We want to make sure that every employer in the industry understands what these principles look like, that these principles are broken down into understandable and accessible and implementable management systems, and that we are supporting employers to use those systems. Because ECIP is not an audit-based program and does not require annual verification audits, it is much more scalable than any audit-based alternative would be. The beauty of the internet is that this platform is accessible to any grower at field level who has access to the internet. And so the goal of this program from the beginning, given that the ethical charter is an industry-wide commitment, would be to build an industry-wide capacity building tool, accessible and available to any employer in the system. So starting in 2021, as Carmen mentioned, some buyers and suppliers came together. We piloted a variety of approaches. And finally, we landed on the ECIP Lab platform that you'll learn more about in a few moments. If you want to understand how this came to be, it's really important to understand the collaboration among 6 major buyers that you see on the screen, as well as significant supplier input and input from a farm labor contractor to make sure, as this program expands, that FLCs are also included as key employers of agricultural labor. Because the ethical charter belongs to the International Fresh Produce Association, IFPA has a seat on the advisory board and is an observer to the process. EFI and the advisory group consult regularly with IFPA to make sure that it's fully on board with the rollout. And finally, let me just explain what it costs to get into the program. I want to emphasize that Equitable Food Initiative is a not-for-profit organization. EFI is not making money on this program. The cost of the program has been established in consultation with the advisory group in order to cover the cost of implementation. So participating buyers make an initial $100,000 contribution towards the development and expansion of the software platform and annually pay $25,000 to access the data from the system. Suppliers pay on an annual basis based on their annual sales. And you see on the screen a sliding scale that ranges from $1,800 a year for smaller suppliers all the way up to $9,000 a year for larger ones. The key for growers, and as suppliers invite growers into the system, we understand how important this information is. If you are a grower who holds a field level benchmarked social responsibility certification already, you have free access to the platform. There is no charge. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen there at ethicalcharterprogram.org, you can actually see a list of the 17 benchmarked field level certifications that qualify a grower for free access. If the field level operation does not have a social responsibility certificate, then that grower would pay an annual fee of $200 to access the system and to learn and report on their progress over time. Madeline?
Thank you so much, Peter, for that overview. Fantastic. Awesome. Up next, we will be hearing from Laura Himes, Vice President of Global Sourcing for Produce at Walmart. We have a little bit of a queue up here, so give us a little bit of patience. Here we go. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Laura Himes. I lead our produce sourcing team at Walmart, and I'm excited to talk to you today about the Ethical Charter Implementation Program. In 2020, Walmart committed to becoming a regenerative company, one focused on creating a net positive impact for people and planet. To support the people working throughout our produce supply chains, we worked with the Produce Marketing Association and United Fresh Produce Association, now IFPA, alongside a group of retailers and suppliers to create the Ethical Charter on Responsible Labor Practices. The Ethical Charter outlines a common set of principles for the produce industry, and we asked all of our fresh produce and floral suppliers to join us in endorsing those principles. Now it is time to take the next step in moving from endorsement to action. Over the past several years, we have partnered across the supply chain to create the Ethical Charter Implementation Program. We are excited about the potential of this program to scale across the produce value chain without adding additional audits. The program provides tools and resources for growers to assess their management structures, benchmark their progress, and continue to improve. What we love about this program is that it focuses on continuous improvement while offering many tools and resources to those who need additional support. We are excited to start inviting our suppliers into the program and are grateful in advance for your partnership and engagement. Thank you.
Awesome. As you heard, Laura underlines ECIP's movement from endorsement to action, bringing us to the ECIP Grower Lab. Grower Lab is one major key component to the ECIP platform. Here to give us a rundown on how suppliers invite their growers and a peek into what growers should expect once they're in ECIP is Deanna Monroe, EFI's data manager. Deanna, welcome and take it away.
Thank you, Madeline. Welcome, everyone. One of your first steps as a paid supplier is to invite your growers into Grower Lab. So to do that, you're going to click on the green Invite More Growers button. You're going to input the grower name, the contact email of the individual that will be managing that grower account, and then an optional field for you is something internal that you can use to reference that grower, and then just click Invite. Once that grower is invited, they will be in Grower Lab and start on the first pillar, the Learn pillar, where they will have a rundown of all 12 principles here on the left-hand side. When you click on one of the principles, a description of that principle will show under the title of the principle. And then if you click Continue, under that will be resources that you can click into to help you answer this particular management system. And then as you can see, I've already answered this particular. I haven't added any notes, but if you need to add notes, you can add notes here. You can set a priority, a high, medium, or low. And then that will automatically add that medium priority for you. And then you click Continue to go to the next assessment under that principle. If you want to skip around, you can just click the caret keys next to each of the principles, and that will show you each of the management systems assessed under those principles. So if you want to go to the assessment itself and answer that way, just navigate back up to the home field here and go to Assess. This is where you'll see the ratings for each of the management systems. So you can change your answer. You can click on the little eye icon here. That'll bring you back to the resources, any of your notes, if you added any priorities. If you need help answering them, you can click on the question mark here. And we've outlined the description for each of these ratings. And then you can click through to change the answer, of course, and then just click Continue. The last pillar of the Learn, Assess, benchmarks, if you click on benchmark, you'll be able to see your overall completion. You'll be able to see your progress per principle. You can click into them if you want to know more. Let's go back to benchmark. You can scroll down and see how you answered per principle. And then for the profile, you can learn how to build your score. Just click this link here. To earn the certification star, you need to have one of those 17 benchmarked certifications. Just click Add here. And then once you click on the drop-down, it'll give you all 17. You want to add your certification type, your certification number, the expiration date, and then add. And then reach out to support@ethicalcharterprogram.org. Let us know that you've added it and we'll add your free subscription. The assessment channel star you can add or you can earn by completing all 52 assessment questions. The worker assessment star is something that we plan on standing up at the end of the year, but right now it's coming soon. And then the last 2 stars are earned together through the learning channel. And you earn those stars via credible engagement throughout the platform. That's adding notes, setting priorities, and adding additional users to manage the grower lab account. And then just to switch back over to the supplier view. So the supplier can see the grower engagement through their supplier dashboard. So that particular grower was DM Fields. They had 100% complete on the assessment. They completed it July 23rd, or their last activity was July 23rd. And these are the stars that they've earned. They've earned the assessment channel because they've completed all 52 assessment questions. They have earned a star for the learning channel, and they've earned a star for the advanced engagement. Those last 2 stars were adding notes, setting priorities, adding additional users. And with that, I will hand it back to you, Madeline.
Thank you so much, Deanna. That was a great overview and run through. Next up, we have Kenton Harmer, EFI's Director of Market-Based Impact, to give us a little glimpse of what is happening with ECIP over the next couple of months. Go ahead, Kenton.
Yeah, thanks, Madeline. So ECIP is a growing ecosystem that is for all things related to high-performing workforces. And so we've got a big ambition, a very stacked roadmap. Some of the things that you'll be seeing next is on September 3rd, we're going to launch Supplier Lab. So Deanna just walked you through Grower Lab. This is the grower experience where they're earning stars through capacity building and credible engagement. That same format will become Supplier Lab in September 3rd, except instead of the 52 management systems that Deanna talked about, it's going to be 18 management systems that are related to how do you support your grower network to maintain or achieve alignment with the ethical charter. So instead of you as an employer of farm workers, which is what Grower Lab is really focused on, it's you as a supplier who has a grower network who needs support and encouragement and incentives in order to be successful at this work. So Supplier Lab will come out in early September, and we'll have a lot of communications that will help you understand how to access it and what to do once you're in the Supplier Lab experience. That then we're going to give you September and October to get familiar and comfortable there. Of course, our support team will be standing by to walk you through anything that is confusing. And then on November 4th, we take the engagement stars that you have earned by supporting your grower network, and we turn on the buyer dashboard. And this is the chance starting in November where our buying partners can see the entire supply chain that's in the ECIP ecosystem and see them based on their credible engagement. So be able to rank them based on the engagement profile concept. After that, in 2025, you can expect some other additions to this. We're going to bring a profile in for farm labor contractors, such a critical part to labor management in this industry. So we'll have FLC labs so that we can make sure that they can get rewarded for any high-performing practices that they already have in place and get them on a pathway for improvement as well. Growers will get credit for using the highly engaged FLCs. Suppliers will get credit for using growers who are engaging with the highly engaged FLCs. So we really see that reward structure flow up for that anybody in this industry that is credibly engaged in this kind of continuous improvement work, that ultimately comes through to your customers, and the market and the industry all get to increase in this way. We're also going to see an enhanced marketplace in 2025. So the software can get you so far. We've got 3 to 10 resources for each one of the management systems in Grower Lab. We'll have free online resources available in Supplier Lab for how do you support your supply chain. That'll get you so far, and that'll get you started. It won't get everybody to the finish line of where you want to be as a supplier in this case, or as a grower. So you can access the market where you can look at consulting services and other products that are available that can help you continue your journey. And in 2025, we also expect to expand the number of buying partners. We expand to see more of our customer friends join this effort and really make this an industry effort to increase alignment with the ethical charter right down to the soil. So Madeline, that's sort of what we're looking at for the rest of the year and into 2025.
Amazing, exciting stuff. Great choice on the background color too, Kenton. Love the match. That wraps up our formal presentation. We have a few questions that have come in, so I'd like to invite Deanna back up and Peter back up to field some of these awesome questions that have come in chatting. All right, everybody, give me a little bit of grace while I scroll through these so we can read them and field them. All right, first up, what is a typical timeline from when a new Latin American grower signs up without any social certification to when they are certified / in compliance?
Yeah, let me take a stab at this. So what I want to really emphasize through this is that this is not a compliance program. This is not a certification program. So again, this is about capacity building and continuous improvement. Okay. If your growers are certified, then we reward that work, right? But for a LATAM grower or for any grower whatsoever, it's not about reaching a moment where you say, I am now compliant with something. It's about onboarding into the system. It's about using the learning resources, using the assessment, and then seeing your own data reflected back to you in the benchmarking page in order to credibly engage in the work of capacity building and continuous improvement. So that those markers of engagement for LATAM growers or any other growers, they really start as soon as you're in the system, all right? You can start earning those engagement profile stars. How long it takes you to add each of the stars really kind of depends on both the position where you find yourself, and how much opportunity there is for you to move forward. So we can't really put a date on it or a time duration, but think about talking to your growers as a way of like, get into the system, start using the learning channel, the assessment channel, the benchmark channel. The engagement stars will follow, and if they want them faster, more engagement gets them to them faster.
Madeline, can I just add to that? That the whole concept of this as a capacity building program rather than a compliance program is that it's iterative. You know, there are so many resources, there's so much to learn in this lab platform that we expect the employers to be going back into the program progressively and benchmarking their progress over time. So if you want to know how long it takes for the grower to register, it's almost instantaneous, as Deanna was telling you. Once they're in the system, that happens very quickly. How long it takes them to continuously improve their system often depends on how much they use the platform and go back into it.
Great, thanks for that add and that clarification on capacity building as well. All right, moving on to the next one. Can you assign 2 or more contacts per grower? And can you show how to avoid the $200 grower fee if a social certification is in place?
Yeah, let me walk through that really quickly. So yes, so the supplier invites the grower, and they invite a single user to that grower. That user then is encouraged, and in fact, give you some inside ball, it's part of showing credible engagement when that user adds other people within the organization. And the thinking behind this is simple, is that not everybody necessarily has all the information to credibly assess themselves against the management system. So go find those folks, bring them into the system as users. There's no additional cost. It's a very simple process. Technically, you use the invite user thing, and you can have as many internal folks in your instance of Grower Lab as you want. And then in terms of if you have one of the benchmark certifications, the grower will hit the paywall, and on the paywall, it's going to give them an option that says, if you have one of these things, email your certification to this address. As soon as you do that, we receive that, we validate it, and then we give you a free and active subscription for the duration of the certification that you submit. And that means you're through the paywall without paying the $200.
And it should be this address that's up here on the screen, support at Ethical Charter Program.
That's right.
So
That's
just
exactly it.
email that address with your certificate and we'll get you in. Great. All right, here's the next one. What if you're a supplier and a grower? Do you have to do both grower lab and supplier lab? Follow-up question to that. And what if you're a supplier, grower, and using FLCs?
Yeah. So the answer is yes. Grower lab is different than supplier lab. We have many vertically integrated. Carmen was on here earlier. TNA is a perfect example of a vertically integrated operation that also has contracted growers. So TNA comes in as a supplier, and then there's a TNA grower profile, and then there's a profile for all of their other contracted growers. Your FLCs, they come in 2025, they'll have their own ability to come in. What we're doing with FLCs right now is you bring them in with a grower profile.
Great. So more to come there. Perfect. All right, next one. Kenton mentions buyers being able to rank suppliers and their growers. How will that be done if data is anonymous?
Yeah, so remember, the key thing here is your responses in grower lab or supplier lab are not shown outside of your organization. So that is key. The data flow is that you are earning engagement stars that are fit onto the graphic that you see on the screen, right? That's the data that is shared. What we're sharing from grower to supplier is who's in there using this platform to do the work, to show continuous improvement, to build their capacity. And that's going to be the same supplier to buyer. It'll be outlined very clearly in supplier lab how to earn those stars. You're going to earn those stars, and that's what your customers will see starting on November 1. That's the ranking we're talking about. Is, the gold, there's not a who are the 3-star suppliers, who are the 2-star suppliers, who are the 0-star suppliers in the supply chain. That's what buyers will have access to starting in November.
Awesome. All right, this next one is a 3-parter. So I'll read all 3 parts and then you can digest as it goes. All right, first off, what does the buyer dashboard show? What percentage of growers should suppliers be targeted or realistically expecting for engagement in the ECIP lab? And finally, how often should suppliers be expecting growers to engage in the platform?
So let me take that one if I can, Madeline. And again, just to reiterate what Kenton just said, if you look at that star profile in the top left corner of the slide, right, the 4 green stars and the gold star, that engagement profile is what customers will see, not the raw scores, not the specific responses on each of the management systems in the platform. So that's what the buyer dashboard will show. And essentially, and again, let's just reinforce this, what it will show the customer is the degree of credible engagement rather than the degree of compliance. We just have to keep saying that over and over again. The second question is really important, and I want to make this very clear, right? Equitable Food Initiative is the implementing partner that manages this program. But the question around what percentage of growers should suppliers be targeting or realistically expecting for engagement is very, very much between you and your retail customer. Many of you on this call have been contacted by one of the major buyers that participates in this program. Some of those have given you already guidelines around how much of your supply chain they would like to see participating and at what rate. It's really important for each of you as a supplier to discuss ECIP with your retail customer and make sure you're clear on what their expectations or requirements might be with respect to the engagement process. That is not something that EFI or the advisory group, for that matter, would establish. That's very much specific to you and your customer. And finally, how often should growers engage in the platform? We hope this is an opportunity for you all as suppliers to really assess improvements in responsible labor practices in your supply chain. We think there are huge business benefits to this, right? At a time of scarce labor, the better the employer, the safer and healthier and more respectful the workplace, the more likely it is you're going to get access to scarce workers. So we want folks to see this as a business opportunity. We want suppliers to encourage growers to engage precisely because it's going to make them better suppliers and better growers and more effective in the marketplace. And therefore, rather again than setting minimums or maximums, we believe you'll find when you go into the lab system, there are tremendous resources. It's a great learning opportunity. Encourage your growers to take advantage of that.
Great, thank you. All right, next one. The website says there are equivalent programs such as SMETA. How does that work? Can producers choose to be audited by SMETA or by ECIP?
Yeah, so I just want to really come back to this, and we will say this 100 more times because it's part of the innovation, but also part of the strangeness of this program is that there is no audit, right? This is not a compliance test. This is a capacity building and continuous improvement program. So yes, there's a SMETA audit. If you choose to do a SMETA audit, then provide us the documentation through the process on the grower paywall, and we will give you a free and active subscription for the duration that SMETA, that you're covered by SMETA. Okay, so you really have a choice to make, right? That makes a lot of business sense for a lot of growers to go the certification path, right? And there's 17 on our list to choose from. We also recognized in the design of this program that certification is not the right tool for everybody in the supply chain. And so therefore, we're still giving a accessible program where folks that can't get certified can come in and earn engagement stars through credible engagement as an alternative to getting certified when certification doesn't fit.
And if I can just emphasize one point that was mentioned earlier, if you have a SMETA or another certification for your facility, that is one thing. The question is, do you have a SMETA or third-party certification for your field level operations? That is what would get the grower in. So as you look into this issue, make very, very sure that you understand the scope of whatever third-party certification you have, because if it does not cover field level operations, then yes, you will need to enter into the ECIP program or the grower lab.
Great, thanks for that additional clarification, Peter. I'm seeing a couple of questions come in on very specific use cases. You did provide your email. We will follow up with you from support directly to that question. So no worries, we will get to you and have one-on-one with you. But let's hop into some more broad-reaching questions here. What data on the growers will you be sharing with the retailers? Total number of stars, type of stars earned?
Yeah, so again, responses to the assessment questions, not shared with suppliers, not shared with the retailers. What the retailers will see starting in November on the buyer dashboard is going to be a listing of their suppliers and their engagement profile. So that's the data. They're not reaching back into identifying particular growers in their supply chain that are doing well or struggling. Okay, it's a flow of measuring who's doing the work and giving suppliers rewards for having more people in their grower network doing the work, and then giving the suppliers a reward from the buyers for supporting that work and engaging in it. So again, what the buyers see is engagement profile of their suppliers.
Great. All right, this one's kind of long, so stick with me. Is there some initial feedback from retailers on the program? I recognize each one of them have independent programs, social responsibility, and sourcing departments that require a social audit or similar. Will the ECIP become a tool to standardize all of these retail requirements or just another task for suppliers?
What an excellent question, and really, really fundamental to this program. So the first thing to start with is that going back now 4 years, the 6 major retailers that you saw featured in the governance group have been involved in the design and implementation of this program from the very beginning. So at least with respect to those customers, the Walmart and Sam's, the Costco's and Kroger's, the McDonald's and the Targets, absolutely, ECIP is being integrated into all of their social responsibility requirement systems. That is not a seamless process, as I'm sure you're aware. These are large companies. As you know, some of them have had other requirements in the system before, and there is a process for sure of integrating ECIP into that. But the aspiration here is not that ECIP replace all of those existing social responsibility requirements, but rather that it be seamlessly integrated. And as I've mentioned before, most of those retailers do not have an audit or verification requirement at field level. Their visibility, if you will, or their risk management stops at the packing or processing facility level. So the whole point of ECIP is to extend their social responsibility assurance programs all the way to the soil, as Kenton said earlier. So I imagine that as ECIP rolls out, this process of integration will take some time, but absolutely with all 6 members of the advisory group that are major buyers, as well as other major retailers who are considering entering the program, the goal is to make sure that it is very clear to suppliers where ECIP fits in the range of different supplier requirements that they will ask.
Awesome. Deanna, I think this one's for you. Quick clarification. Certifications must be spent by the grower or the supplier to the support ethical email to the growers who have access to the ECIP Lab platform.
Yeah, good question. Either way, we just need a copy of the certification to grant access to those growers for free. So if the supplier has a list of their growers and they have one of those benchmark certifications, they can just send us a list of those growers and send us a copy of those certificates, or the grower can send it to us and we'll give them access. We just ask if the grower sends it that they make super clear which supplier invited them, so to make sure we connect them to the correct supplier on the back end. But either supplier or grower, we don't discriminate. We need as long as we get the certification, either one is fine.
And it's worth reminding folks that their free access aligns perfectly with the date of the certification. So for example, if you have a field level certification from a third party that's been benchmarked that expires on December 31, you have free access until December 31. If you choose to renew that field level certification, then once again, you would be granted free access. But that is an important detail to make sure that the certification that you're citing is actually still valid.
Yes. All right, another little technical question. You touched base on this with another question. Walmart and their in-person audits that they are requiring for responsible sourcing includes EFI. If I am already doing ECIP for another company, Costco, how can this qualify for Walmart right now? Or is ECIP a separate self-assessment platform now and EFI provides in-person audits that qualify for Walmart?
EFI is one of a series, I think there may be 9 or 10 third-party certifications that Walmart accepts in order to satisfy its responsible sourcing requirement, exactly as you said. But the key thing to remember is Walmart does not require a field level certification. So in other words, EFI and many of the other certifications on their list also conduct facility or packing or processing audits. And those are the ones that Walmart is citing. In order to reach field level, and again, this is something you should clarify with your Walmart merchant very directly, right? Their goal in supporting and promoting ECIP is to extend that assurance beyond the facility to field level. So if you have, since you mentioned EFI, if you have EFI certification at field level already, then as has been said many times, you would have, or that grower that has that field level certification would have free access to the lab. But again, the key is speak to your merchant If you're in ECIP already through Costco, then that ECIP engagement will absolutely work for whatever Walmart is asking you to do with respect to ECIP, but it should not be confused with the e-certification.
And Madeline, if I can just sort of add a point to that, which is you never have to do something twice in ECIP, right? If you have completed the assessment, and let's say Kroger is the one that initially asked you to come in, but you're also selling to some of the other buying partners, or you're a grower who is selling to multiple suppliers. We see that all the time. You do everything once, and then we just use the data flow to make sure that your work is being received and acknowledged through the value chain with either with your suppliers or with your buyers.
Great, thank you. We have a few more to get through, so just hang tight. All right, this brings up CB, so let's stick with that. In the ECIP website, in the marketplace section, there are the principles. In the certification section, there are 2 certification bodies listed. What does this mean? Are there only these 2 bodies recognized by ECIP as expert service suppliers?
Yeah, it's a great question. Absolutely not. We're not saying you have to use these 2 CBs. In fact, we don't have an opinion about which CB you use if you are pursuing certification. We put out a pretty broad call for this first iteration of the marketplace to say who wanted to be represented on there and what services can you offer growers and suppliers that are doing this work. The ones that are on there are the ones that came back and said, oh, we want to really highlight that we can be the CB for many of the 17 on the benchmark list. But there's not an endorsement of them in particular from EFI, nor are we making a statement on folks that don't appear on that list.
ECIP has grown tremendously in the last 2 months alone. We've gone from something like 50 supplier subscribers to over 225. So I think what you're going to see, and we from an EFI perspective can assure you, is a real expansion of the marketplace in the coming months, right? As this industry-wide program picks up speed, a lot more people are going to be interested in it, and we will make sure that the marketplace expands to accommodate that.
I've seen a couple questions come in about when this ECIP webinar recording will be available, and it will be sent directly to your email that you registered for this webinar with in the next couple of days. So keep your eyes peeled from that, but it should come directly to that email. All right, last question, y'all. Do growers and suppliers have different content? Also, how do you manage when the supplier grows their own produce?
Yeah, so yes, so there's grower lab and there's supplier lab, right? Those are they look a lot the same, they're built on the same structure, they've got the same palette, but they are fundamentally looking at different things. Grower lab is providing resources and an assessment tool that helps employers be the best possible employers they can be, aligned with the ethical charter. That's what Grower Lab is doing, and it's doing that through saying, hey, here's an optimal definition of 52 management systems, right? How do you feel? How close are you to those? Are you where you want to be? If not, here's some resources that can help you get to where you want to be, when in consideration of the optimal, right? That's Grower Lab. Supplier Lab is saying, you got all these growers, and some of them are vertically integrated, some of them are owned and managed by you, some of them are not, some of them are managed. There's a million different models, but basically to this question is, you will want to still set up a grower profile if it's vertically integrated so that you have access to that grower lab. But the supplier lab is saying with that grower network, there's a really critical role for suppliers in supporting folks, in really helping them understand what to do, how to do it, how to get rewarded for it. So we're going to ask you 17 questions. We're going to have you assess yourself against 17 questions, so a much smaller set, that are all related to what are the practices that you can be doing that, in essence, help your grower network really achieve alignment with the ethical charter. So it looks the same, it smells the same, but they're going after two different ends.
Amazing. That was it, everybody. Thank you so much for the amazing questions. They were very insightful and helped us dig a little bit deeper. A couple of you left specific questions for your organization. We will reach out to you via email, so expect that to come through. We did not forget about you. Thanks so much for participating, everybody, and to my panelists. Great to have you, and have a great rest of your day.